take the trade right here once it taps into here. Right? And not wait for confirmation. How can I do that? The only way we're going to refine our POI, right? We're not going to move the green line. We're not going to move it. We're going to keep the key level. And all we're going to do is drop to a lower time frame. We're going to drop down to a lower time frame and see what's lining up with this key level right there. So let's say that in the lower time frame, we have a 5-minute order block lining up with the key level. Then that's what I'm going to use to enter from. Am I going to use this candle? Or am I going to use the price level, this key level right here? We're going to keep the key level where it's at. It's not going to be moved. The only thing that's going to change is your stop loss. Your SL will be above the refined POI, lining up with your key level. It won't be up here. It will be just above that new POI that you marked up. And then that's how you get those entries right there. Okay. Now, I hope you're still with me. I know it's kind of complicated. Don't worry, it will make sense. So now, let's continue going with the order block still. When we have a order block, most of us don't know what POI are we going to use. So let's say we have a POI right here, a POI right here, and a POI right here, all inside of this order block. This order block, let's say it's the 1 hour. And those purple ones, let's say it's a 5-minute. 5-minute POIs. Which one are you going to use? You're going to use the one that is lining up with the higher time frame order block. That's the one that you're going to use. That's why you see me catching insane entries and you don't know where I caught them from. It doesn't make sense to you, but now you're going to be learning how. We use the higher time frame blocks to get our entries. And all we do is refine to a lower time frame to adjust our stop loss. We use the higher time frame blocks to get our entries. We use the lower time frame to adjust our stop loss. Okay, that's how I get entries. If I have a block right here that's lining up with the higher time frame POI, and then all my rules meet, of course, we're combining everything together. It's not going to be just one thing. Like I said, constant itself does not work, in my opinion. There's inducement. I'm going to confidently take it there. And I don't care about these. I ignore them. That's how I'm going to take my entry. You're going to learn throughout the course, right, that this is going to be what we call a direct entry because we don't wait for confirmation. All right. So that's how we choose the POI. And the same thing goes for the rejection block. And the same thing goes for the breaker block. You just refine it down to a lower time frame. And it should line up with those blocks. And the same thing goes for the unmitigated wick. So for example, if we have a unmitigated wick, inside that wick, there's going to be a order block. It's going to be an OB. Okay. So right there. And that's going to line up. Let's say the blue, that's the 1 hour. And the purple, it's the 1 minute. The 1 minute is going to be a order block right there, let's say. A order block or a breaker block, so a POI. So my stop loss is going to be below that right there. So my higher time frame block is lining up. All right, it's lining up right there with the lower time frame block. So that's the one I'm going to use, the one that lines up with the higher time frame. So my entry is going to be here. Stop loss is going to be right here. That's how we enter something called a direct entry, which you will learn later. But right now I need to understand how we're using these POIs. So far making sense? I hope so. Same thing with the rejection block and the breaker block. Okay, we need a higher time frame POI. Right? We draw our key level or price level, however you call it, because it's called either or key level, and it has to line up with a smaller time frame POI. And once you find that, your stop loss just goes on that smaller time frame point of interest. The only thing you move is your stop loss, not your entry. All right, now let's be real here. Sure, if you're like 1 or 2 pips, let's say for example, the POI is like right here, and you're like a pip away, then let's be realistic, and let's just move it just a little bit. It's not gonna hurt you. It's just a pip or 2 pip away. It wouldn't matter. Your stop loss will still be up here, right? It still lines up with the block because the broker data is different on every broker. So 1 or 2 pips won't hurt. All right, that's just the reality of it. It's not gonna be picture perfect like this. But your stop loss goes here, right? So now let me, all right. So let's say, for example, let's say we have a rejection block, right? This is important to understand. There is a order block in the open, a order block in the 50%. There's an order block in the open and an order block in the 50% of the wick. And this is commonly or common on rejection blocks and unmitigated wicks, right? Because it's a wick. There is a OB in the open and one at the 50%, open and 50%, right? On the smaller time frame. Yellow, let's say they're like the 1 hour time frame, right? Now, it doesn't have to be exactly OB. It can be a breaker block. It can be a unmitigated wick. It can be a rejection block, right? But mostly they're OBs, order blocks, right? But it doesn't have to be. So let's just call it a POI, so I won't confuse you guys. There's a POI in the open and POI in the 50%. POI in the open and POI in the 50%. Okay. So when price comes up and taps the open and fails to take out the low, that becomes weak. That feeds liquidity into this point of interest up here. And then it drops. So this is why it's very important to understand and know, right? Know your weak highs, know your weak lows, understand what's going on, react to price, watch how price is being delivered, because you will have a perfect entry here, and then you go break even, and then it comes back up, it takes you up, like, why? Why'd that happen? Well, there is still opportunity for price to come up here, but it needed a reason, and it had a reason. It didn't have a reason before. It didn't have a reason before. And this takes me into another thing, which is we're always going to choose the POI closest to the liquidity, right? So if the inducement is formed here, the closest POI is this one. So that's the one that we're going to choose first. Always the closest one to the liquidity. Whether it's liquidity or inducement, the closest one. That's the closest one right there, the open. So now I watch price. I watch price. If price fails, then 90% of the time, guys, I'm not gonna say 100% because I don't want to say 100%. It'll come back up and tap into the 50% of the wick, which is the other POI above, and then it'll drop because now it had a reason to go up there. That's why you have to watch price. You react, we wait, we react, and then we make the move. We're not trying to guess. Okay. If there is no liquidity, let's say sitting below this POI, if there's no liquidity, then price will easily just blow through, pull back, then create a liquidity, then go on downward and drop. So this block will completely just not be valid. That's why we need liquidity. And this goes with all POIs, unmitigated order blocks, breaker blocks, okay? The same rules apply. The same thing. So, quick recap. There is a order block in open, a order block in the 50%. All right, and like I just mentioned, it doesn't have to be an order block. It can be a breaker block. It can be a rejection block, right? It doesn't have to be an order block. But I just know based on my back testing is most likely a block there, right? But it can be any. So like I mentioned, POI, all right, point of interest. Now, hope so far this makes sense. I know it's kind of a lot to take in, probably very new information for you, but we watched the video and it will start making sense little by little. This is basic stuff, believe it or not. So I'm trying to explain it in the best way possible, step by step. So yeah. All right. Now there's another thing that I do use as a POI, and that would be imbalanced filled price action. So in short terms, IMB, also known as insufficiency fair value gap. So the way I use it, we have imbalance, right? This imbalance can be an entire point of interest, correct? So all of that can be a POI. However, what I want to see is price fill, and that's what you call